Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Building Communities for a Zero Waste Approach webinar series. This webinar is part of our Keep America Beautiful Transition to Zero Waste Community series, and we're thrilled to have you join us today. My name is Jacqueline Grace. I'm the Chief Development Officer at Keep America Beautiful. On behalf of Keep America Beautiful and our 700 national affiliates, I would like to thank you for joining us. The mission of Keep America Beautiful is to inspire and educate people from all different backgrounds to take action every day to improve and beautify their community environment. As part of that work, this series is designed to convene discussions to accelerate transition to zero waste within our cities, our towns, our rural communities. To date, we have heard from leaders overseeing municipalities, advisors at corporations, researchers in sustainability, all speak about how they have implemented or are implementing zero waste practices to help move toward a sustainable future. For today's webinar, we have invited representatives from a corporation, from a local municipality, and also from a Keep America Beautiful affiliate to discuss how they are implementing zero waste solutions. Before we begin, I'd like to ask that you use the question panel on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions during the webinar. We will address questions later in the session. And now, please join me in welcoming our host, Kanika Greenlee. She's the Executive Director of our Keep Atlanta Beautiful Commission and a Keep America Beautiful Board Vice Chair. Kanika is also joined by panelist Rachel Herring, Director of Keep Texas Beautiful in their recycling department, and also Danielle Robinson, who's Head of Corporate Responsibility at Diageo North America. Also, Gena McKinley is joining us, the Strategic Initiatives Division Manager for the City of Austin, Texas. And so with that, over to you, Kanika.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline. I'm so excited to be with this dynamic powerhouse of ladies today to talk about building community partnerships for a zero waste approach. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for joining us. So I'm going to dive right into the first question. So for a community that's looking into adopting zero waste practices, where can they start, and what are the stepping stones one can take to begin the process? And I'm going to start with you, Gena.
Sure. So I'm with the City of Austin. Thanks for having me today. And just to give you a little context and a little background, in Austin, we kind of started this process really in 2005, and we signed on to the United Nations Environmental Accords, which committed to a number of different practices and policies in our community, but one of those was hitting zero waste by the year 2040, which we define as 90% diversion of materials from the landfill. And from there, a few years later, our council adopted a zero waste strategic plan in 2009, which was the first in Texas. And then in 2011, we adopted a zero waste master plan, which really was kind of a larger plan that identified specific benchmarks and strategies and told us kind of this is what we need to do in order to get to zero waste. So I think it's important to give you that kind of summarized background to show that this really started from our policymakers in Austin kind of getting behind the concept of zero waste. And I think that's really important that you have that local policy support as you move forward and have those conversations with the decision makers when you start this journey. And then it's important to look at what's happening in your community on the ground. What kind of data do you have access to? What kinds of practices are happening? Where are you in that journey of reaching zero waste? And what is your interest in reaching zero waste? What does your community need? And then kind of go from there. In Austin, just to give you an example, we control about 15%, we meaning the City of Austin, the solid waste utility, control about 15% of materials that are generated, which means that there's a large portion, 85%, that we don't directly control. So when we think about, as a community, how do we get to zero waste, we really have to think about how can we bring the community along with us, the businesses, residential properties that we don't service as a utility, and think about how to incentivize and encourage those zero waste practices and behaviors so that we can set the foundation before moving straight into mandates. So in Austin, we did things like create rebate programs or pilots that incentivize and often subsidize zero waste practices and behavior, whether it's composting at home and paying for a home composter for a residential customer, we're working with our business community to say test composting with the city kind of footing that bill. So it's really identifying what you've got in place and then starting to move people in the direction, understand what you're talking about when you talk about zero waste. And I'd also say just look to other cities too. Talk to people who have zero waste plans and see what worked, what didn't, especially the part that didn't, so that you can try to avoid some of those hiccups along the way. So that's kind of big picture, some of my thoughts on that.
So Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I know that you work with a lot of smaller and rural communities. So talk about those basics when you're working in a smaller or rural community.
Sure. So thank you for having me. I am Rachel Herring with Keep Texas Beautiful, and I'm the director of Keep Texas Recycling, which is, like you mentioned, our recycling program within the affiliate. Our focus areas, just so you kind of know where I'm coming from with our program, we actually run a rural recycling cooperative where we help manage 60 different communities' recycling programs. We market their material, we provide technical support, we implement a lot of programs, and sometimes we help make them more efficient. We also do a lot of special projects. I've worked with some national organizations that have commodity-specific programs that we've tried to do some pilot programs with them, and we've worked with several brands to try and expand recycling of certain commodities. And then we've also just done a lot of technical assistance. I've worked with a lot of different states in their rural programs. So that's kind of my passion and kind of where I'm coming from. Zero waste is a really big concept, and for some of our smaller communities, that's almost out of their realm. They don't even have access to recycling. So a lot of times that's kind of where we're coming from when we get started. Even before that, though, sometimes we look at some really simple, small options to get them going. I do believe that thinking small and starting small isn't a bad thing. Sometimes it can lead to bigger things. So, looking at green purchasing policies, maybe that's something you can change in your community. Sometimes it's starting off with the Earth Day event or an America Recycles Day event, something just to kind of kick off and see what your community might take to. And then if you want to start a recycling program, and obviously that's my specialty, we usually start with a stakeholder group. We figure out who is invested, and this could really, I think, carry over to any type of zero waste project that you wanted to start. We look at, getting the city leadership involved, of course, the Keep Texas Beautiful affiliate, the school district, anybody and everyone that might have an interest in that project and what we can do. And then we develop a plan and figure out how we're going to staff it, how we're going to fund it, how we're going to move forward. I think my biggest advice is to go slow with any type of project that you want to see, because you want that longevity, you want that long-term success. And so it doesn't have to be big right off the bat. But think of what would make an impact in your community, get the stakeholders involved, and get a plan together.
And Danielle, I don't want to leave you out. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? But I have several questions for you coming down the line.
No, I think they really covered it. For me, it's about the collaborative partnership and how you can make a bigger impact and scale that by partnering with people who are aligned with for us as a corporation, what we are trying to achieve. So, we have a number of different targets that we've set out for 2030, and some of them we've already achieved, having, 100% replenished in water stressed areas, and we're at 116% already, and that's a 2030 target. We have a number of brands that are have recyclable content in their packaging, like Seagram 7 and Cascade Blonde. So, we're trying to do that, from a brand perspective, but then also from a corporate perspective in some of our water aid projects that we have globally, and just making sure that we are, making sure our sites are carbon neutral. We have a new site that we just opened in Lebanon, Kentucky, which is 100% renewable energy. So making sure that, and that whole site was built on helping us achieve those 2030 targets. So, it takes everybody, as both Gena and Rachel mentioned, supply, your supply, manufacturing, the branding of the products, and then obviously our government relations partnerships as well. So it's a collective community effort.
Thank you. So I'm going to go on to the next question. What type of buy-in do you need to do a pilot program that has some heavy upfront costs, but has long-term sustainable solutions? How can we convince our stakeholders that this is an important direction to move towards? And Gena, I know you had some pilot programs that you all had in Austin, so I'll start with you.
Sure, and I think what we'll continue saying is that it's really important to bring those stakeholders in, bring the community in, take them along with you as you advance these efforts towards zero waste. In Austin, with any new kind of idea, new program, new initiative, or policy, we really have a process where we start and do our research first. So we want to approach the community with confidence that they know that we've done that research, we've looked at what's happening across the country, across the globe even, looked at best practices, so that we're coming at this from a place of knowledge. But knowing that is really just one small piece of it, because what's happening in another part of the country, say California, for example, any of the cities in California, it's not going to be the same as it is in Austin, Texas. We have different state government regulations, local regulations. So we just know, being realistic about the fact that because something works somewhere else doesn't mean that's what's going to work in your local community. And so getting to how do you invest in? If you know that, what do you then do? And so we really try to create those pilot programs and incentives. And what that has looked like, I'll reference the Universal Recycling Ordinance, which is a policy that requires all multifamily and community properties in Austin to have recycling in place. I apologize for my dog in the background. But that's a big chunk of that 85% I mentioned that the city doesn't directly control. That's controlled by the private market. So as we were developing that, we started out with a minimum of recycling 5 materials. And then the business community really got used to that. It's kind of a phased in implementation. And they said, okay, this isn't that hard, we can recycle. But then what's that next step? Because getting to zero waste requires more than recycling. We looked at composting. So organics is a good example. And we had businesses that are like, no, this is too much. It's gross. Texas is hot. It stinks. And so we were able to have stakeholder conversations, hold meetings. And when I say this, it's like a year plus process to have regular conversations. And when you look at organics in the community, and we focused on food permitted businesses, that ranges from hospitals, movie theaters, grocery stores, to mobile food trucks, to cafeterias inside of government buildings, small convenience stores. It ran the gamut. And one size does not fit all. And so we took those different stakeholders in and say, okay, let's do this. We'll pay for it. Will you commit to 6 months of doing organics diversion at your facility? Let's have compost at your restaurant. So we went from fine dining to mobile food convenience, like quick service. And they tested it, and they came and had honest conversations about what worked and what didn't. Texas, we're known for our barbecue. We had a barbecue restaurant that tested it out, and they said, this is nasty and you have to fix some things. This does not work. We have a lot of barbecue sauce, we have a lot of juice. It was running out of the containers, collection needed to be more frequent. So it really informed us, and also developed relationships with their peers. So it wasn't the city coming to say, you have to do this. We know it works because we read some study. It's peers talking to peers about, okay, we should do this because we have this goal as the city of Austin to get to zero waste, and here's what we found. And these are some modifications we think the city needs to consider if we're all going to do this together. And so that's one way, is to really work with the community, to bring them on board, let them test it without having to make wholesale change across the community, and really kind of slowly get to that process. So that's a phased in approach where you bring the community along if you have funding to help them. So it's not out of their pocket at first, because doing some of these things does cost money. And it's, you have to be upfront about that. It's not all going to be a cost savings necessarily, at least not at first, but hopefully in the future, once more people get on board, it would be. So I'll kind of stop there.
And Rachel, I know that there can be some challenges for a rural community. Like you said, some of them don't even have access to recycling. So talk to me a little bit about those upfront costs, whether they're trying to start a curbside recycling program or even just a drop-off recycling program. What are some of those challenges and costs like?
Sure. For us in Texas, we actually have solid waste grant funding available to pay for composting programs, recycling equipment, things like that. We're very lucky, but it is allocated to government entities, school district, things like that. And so we typically need that buy-in from city leadership, county commissioners to really kind of move forward with what we're going to do. And I'm mostly speaking to drop-off recycling programs because that's what we're dealing with in most of the rural areas. They're too far away from a material recovery facility, so that's a way that we are providing recycling access by having a drop-off. Because we need that leadership to buy into what we want to do, and we know it's going to have costs later down the line after we potentially can get them grant funding to get started, we have to kind of appeal to what is important to them. You know, sometimes it's because they care about the environmental benefits and you know, their kids and their grandkids' future, and that's what's going to lead us into doing more with them. Sometimes, and this is probably one of my favorites, there's a lot of municipalities in Texas that own their own landfill, and they want to extend the life of that landfill as long as they possibly can. So that's the buy-in that we look for. Sometimes it really is to keep up with what else is happening in the rest of the state. You know, we're definitely seeing this migration of people moving out of the metropolitan areas into rural areas because now they can work remotely, or they're people that want to move back to the hometown they grew up in to raise their family, whatever it is, but they want the same quality of life that they had. And so they're knocking on city council's door saying, we want this type of quality of life, we want this service where we live. And that's usually sometimes how we get that buy-in. I can say that over the years, I've had a lot of county commissioners that I've worked with to start recycling programs, and I have never lost a county commissioner. And so that sometimes is the buy-in that it's great for their reelection or their election platform to show again that they're providing a service, they're doing something really proactive for their community, and that's how we ultimately get that buy-in.
Yeah, I like to say that recycling is kind of like the gateway drug into sustainability. It's the thing that pulls.
Absolutely.
Right? Who's going to say no to that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So the next question is for everyone, and I think I'm going to start with you, Danielle, first, because you touched on this a little bit already. But how do you formulate your zero waste plan, and where are you in the process of achieving those goals? And what are some of the setbacks you've encountered?
Good question. We are, I would say it depends on where you talk about in the country. We're a global company. So, you know, here in North America, we are trending very, very well from a zero waste perspective. You know, as I mentioned, we just built this new facility, which is just geared on meeting our sustainability goals. I think some of the complicating factors are, you know, what some of Gena and Rachel have already mentioned, you know, depending on what the needs are in the local community where you're located, and getting through some of what is allowed, what is expected, and then also achieving our internal goals around renewable electricity, zero carbon waste, things of that nature. So, you know, and then, you know, employees. So if you look at, we have employees who are also consumers. So when you think about recycling paper and recycling, you know, bottles and cans and things of that nature, creating that kind of environment internally. And one of the ways we've been able to push that needle along is creating an employee resource group, a business resource group called Green IQ, which is really about sustainability and grain to glass, making sure that we are being caretakers for the planet. So they help us with a lot of those initiatives. And, you know, with our work that we do in communities, so our partnership with Keep America Beautiful, our partnership through Bullet with American Forest that we just announced, you know, we'll be building trees through those donations and partnerships, as well as, you know, our Keep America Beautiful project, cleaning up Martin Luther King Boulevard. So, you know, it's all, you know, connected about, you know, how we can activate as a company, but also help local communities, but also partner with organizations like Keep America Beautiful to obtain those goals.
And your goal is, your zero waste goal is for 2030, is that correct?
It is correct, yes. So we just launched our 10-year plan. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and how far are you into reaching that goal, would you say?
I would say we're probably in North America 85 to 90% there, because we've had previous goals before, so it's not our first one. It's just kind of the 10-year revised outlook for the future. But we are, we are very green. I would say one of the places that we have for improvement is recycling, but that is a U.S. issue. We're just terrible at recycling as a people. So one of the things that I'll be doing, in the next upcoming year is focusing on that, which is where the Martin Luther King Project comes into, is, making sure that communities, educating communities around us about recycling and the benefits of recycling and how to do it with ease.
Thanks. And Rachel, what about you? How do you help the communities that you work with formulate their zero waste plan?
Unfortunately, most of them don't have zero waste plans, but we do talk a lot about what the next steps are going to be. Once we do some of the basics, what are we going to do next? What's going to impact their community the most? What are they dealing with? How can they expand from wherever they are? A lot of times when we start recycling programs specifically, we'll start with just really basic commodities and then try and grow the program so we can see it advance. We can kind of have the education and the buy-in catch up with the next steps that we're doing. I feel like any minute I'm going to have more communities start coming to me that want to do composting and want to get more involved with the next steps. And usually you're absolutely right. Recycling is kind of the gateway into so many other things. But for now, we definitely feel like that's kind of check one of what we want to try and get done. If we're not recycling glass in the community, maybe that's the next thing that we add to really kind of push the needle forward. And then what can we do about composting? What can we do about some of the things that are coming in? Just recently, I had a community that has a big solar farm that's going in near their community, and they came to them and said, and it's a community that owns their own landfill, and said, we want to bring you all the cardboard that's coming in. Can you take that? And they were a little overwhelmed. But I said, yes, do it. That's, kind of the next step of, we're addressing the needs of the residents, but let's look at what we can do for the commercial businesses and look outside the box of who else we're not addressing, just even for that perspective. And then is there something else we could be doing with electronics or tires or HHW, all the different things that are going to lead to a more robust zero waste plan.
And Gena, I know that Austin has formulated several policies around zero waste. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, we are in the process of updating our plan that we passed in 2011, which was our kind of roadmap to get to zero waste. And as we look at that plan, we've done a lot of the big things that we set out to do in terms of, like, some examples are the universal recycling ordinance, the policy I mentioned in the previous question, looking at construction and demolition debris as well. We have an ordinance in place for that. Looking at some of the take back ordinances and producer responsibility. We're not quite there yet because that requires much more than just a local government, but things like single-use carry-out bag ordinances, which is a whole story in and of itself, because we had local policies in Texas, and then our state government said, no, you can't do that. And so we put effort into some of these things and they get undone, which, and thinking about what are some of the setbacks. Those are some of the setbacks that we have here in Texas. But yeah, so we've done a lot of those policies, curbside composting for our residential customers. We even have a curbside textile program that we've started in the past couple of years. And yet we are still behind. We have, our target is 2040 for 90% diversion. And we had a benchmark goal in 2020 of 75% diversion. We're currently at about 42%. So we've still got a ways to go. So one of the things we're looking at is, okay, we've done all these things. What are we missing? And then also, are we actually measuring the true diversion in our community? Because when you're looking at diversion rate and you only have access to about 15% of the data, what that means is that we're reliant upon third-party studies to sample some of that 85% to give us our community-wide diversion rate. And that costs money, and we're a municipality, and we we're a city that faces affordability issues, so we don't want to just skyrocket rates. And as a result, we don't have access to those data points on a super frequent basis. So we're also in the process of updating that community-wide diversion rate study and our waste characterization, a lot of data that can help us better inform going forward, how do we measure this, but also where are we really today? Because that 42% measure was really calculated in 2015. Biased a third-party study. We know what we're doing in our residential area, but not so much the community-wide. And we've also built in a lot of programming. So what does it truly look like? So that's something you'll hear me talk about all the time, is just data, data, data. Like, you have to look at the data to really see what you're doing and where you need to put that money, put your resources, develop your plans. You need the data to be able to tell you what to do. So I don't know if I directly answered your question, got on my soapbox about data, but we have had a lot of policies that have been put in place, and I do think have helped us as a community advance in our goals.
Well, my sustainability person corrected me to let me know that we are 0% waste to landfill in all of our sites in North America. So that is awesome.
Wow.
So he's like, we're 100%. So we're good. We're in good shape. Good shape.
Yeah, and I tell my team all the time, you're only as good as your data. So I'm right there with you.
So I wanted to correct that correctly.
So let's talk about partnerships. And Danielle, I'm going to toss it to you first. What are corporations looking for to fund sustainable programs to implement in the communities? And how can organizations start to build those relationships with corporate partners?
Corporations are looking for a variety of things. So really, I would start with their, their public goals that they've stated. So for us, it would be our 2030 goals and what areas they're looking to make headway in. And we're looking for organizations that are well run, that have a clear vision and mission, have a clear strategic plan so that we can align ours with theirs. So making sure that it's not just, we're definitely not a one and done company. So, we spend a lot of time with our Keep America Beautiful partners, just talking about new possibilities, new projects, how to grow and enhance the project that we're currently working on. So it's a constant conversation. So I would tell people to go in with that mindset that it's about building a relationship. This Keep America Beautiful Martin Luther King Boulevard cleanup came up over cocktails, which is the best way to come out with the best ideas coming from an alcohol beverage company. I think also making sure that they're fiscally responsible with the budget and making sure that they have a clear budget. So we're looking for projects that are have impact in the community that we can visibly see at the completion, which is why I love the mission of Keep America Beautiful, because once you clean up, you can actually see the fruits of your labor, and really embedding that mindset into the communities is definitely something that we want to achieve.
And Rachel, have you had any good ideas spark with some of the communities that you work with on building relationships and corporate partnerships?
Sure. We've actually done some pilot programs that have been really exciting with different brands. I can say that I've been in this industry now for about 15 years. And when I first started, sometimes we were looking to try and figure out where corporations were going to help us, what were they doing? And it wasn't always really obvious. And to see all these sustainability goals is huge, because we're definitely out there communicating that with the public, because that's not always something that they necessarily see. And so we're starting to see commercials on things that are happening. We're getting those news stories out there. So that's something that we try and provide and have worked with several. We've got great business in Texas. And so we're trying to stand behind them and let them tell us what they need and how we can help. So I'm a big believer in partnerships, because that is how we make so much happen in rural communities in general. That's what it's never just one person. And so from that standpoint, anything that we can do to work with corporations to help their mission and get them as sustainable as possible, we're ready to do too.
And as one of my colleagues in our mayor's office of sustainability says, partnership is the new leadership. So that's the way that you have to get things done, is through partnership. It really is. So Gena, I'm going to move to you with the next question. How can a community expand or think big about the future of zero waste in their community?
That's a good question. I just say don't take anything off the table, and I think that kind of bleeds into partnerships. If you're a small community and you think you can't get something done, don't stop there, because like partnerships, who do you have near you? Or some of the work that Rachel does where she brings communities together so they could achieve something really big all together. And so I guess I would just say, do think big, don't think small. I don't have any super solid advice, but there's a network of people across the country, across the globe who are doing such interesting things. And there's got to be somebody who will answer the phone and walk you through it. But look at where you are and think about that next step and what would be your ideal, and then figure out how to get there. Call me. I will help you. I will connect you to somebody. If I don't have the answer, we'll think about who does. But
drop your number in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Rachel?
I think since we are working with so many rural drop-off programs, our think big is to get curbside service and what that could look like. And we've really been able to kind of prove that this community is invested in recycling. They are passionate about it. And that has ended up that we've gotten curbside service in several of the communities that started with a drop-off. I think at one point I thought I might be out of a job because everybody's going to get curbside and there won't be a need for some of the things that I do. But so far, it's really, they've all kept their drop-off program because they like it and they want to still have that free option for people that maybe don't live within the city limits. I mean, we have so many programs where, we know that people are coming from counties surrounding them if they don't have a recycling program. So our kind of think big also is just consider everyone around you and how much more you can take and what you can do, and then what the next step is going to be. I've got a city that when I first started working with them, they were supposed to, they were negotiating a contract with their hauler and were considering doing curbside service, and the city council actually voted it down. They decided not to do it, and so we went ahead with the drop-off program. Well, now it's time that it's coming back around, and so we're hoping that through the efforts of the drop-off program, we can prove to that city council that yes, your community wants it. Think big, think about the next steps of what this program can be, how much more could be collected if you had a curbside single stream service too. And that's our ultimate goal in a lot of these communities.
And I would
Danielle,
just
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to tap into that real quick. I was just going to say, like, some of the things you were talking about, Rachel, I would say think about the next big thing. Maybe you're not thinking about it from a zero waste perspective, but tapping into other priorities in your community, because when you really start talking about waste, you can connect something to waste in all kinds of ways. We're a ranching community in Texas, and when we were looking at the bag ordinance, single-use plastic bags were getting, because they became litter, were getting caught in the stomachs of cattle. And so cattle ranchers were on our side and talking to the state legislature. So I just say, thinking big, also thinking about your audience, think about the interest and the language that you're using around what you're talking about. Sorry, back to Danielle. I didn't want to cut you off.
No, great point. Thank you. And Danielle, for you work with a global brand. So what does Think Big look like for you? Because you're thinking at it on a much larger scale.
Well, I'm not, just to clarify, I'm not in charge of global sustainability. My good friend Michael Alexander is, but he always is challenging the organization about going to the next step and being very aggressive in what we're trying to do. And it does vary by region, and to what Gena said, what your environment or your community is looking to resolve around that issue. It could be litter, it could be bottle litters, it could be red cups, if you're a college town. So, the issues run the gamut, but it really is just about continuously to challenge ourselves and also our employees, that we are not just a global citizen, but we are, 24,000 plus employees globally that can also do our own personal part in ensuring that the planet you know, is doing what we can around recycling and renewable waste and all of that. So composting has been a big thing in our neighborhood here in Connecticut during the pandemic, because everybody's, you know, staying home and being able to do that kind of thing. So I've learned more about composting than I wanted to know. So, but I'm interested to hear more about your projects, Rachel. But I think it's really engaging our consumers from a personal level as well as a corporate level, and making sure when we do events, so we're using recyclable materials, cups, napkins, things of that nature, that we're not just creating more trash, you know, when we're going out public facing.
Thank you. So we've got one more question from me before we take some questions from the audience. So thinking about your successes and failures, when you're implementing new programs, can you talk about some of your successes and your failures, but what are the pitfalls, like knowing what you know now, what would you avoid in the future? So Rachel, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay. As far as successes, this program's been around for 25 years, and we have a lot of programs that have been with us for 25 years. And in rural communities, that's huge. And so we're really proud of that longevity success. We're really proud of the fact that we have had some really great partners over the years that have made these programs work in these communities. There's been one instance where the city leadership wasn't interested in starting something, so the school district actually runs the recycling program, and then they started a community garden, and they've done so much more as a result. So that partnership ended up really working out for that community. We actually also have a Keep Texas Beautiful affiliate that runs the recycling program in their community. They've won numerous awards. They're fantastic. They were an unincorporated community. We weren't sure how it was going to get started, and so they kind of took the lead, and that was just a really great success story that we've kind of replicated over the years. I think, you know, I like I mentioned before, I've done several pilot programs, and you know, I'm really honest, just in general, but with the brands and the organizations that I've worked with, you know, I said, this might not work, this might fail. I know you want to win and you want all of that, and I want that, of course, as well, but I just don't take a failure as a loss, because we learned from it and we understood, you know, what didn't go right, what we would do differently, and now, you know, 50 different communities might learn from what we did wrong. And so I think, you know, my two biggest takeaways through everything that I've done over the years is it takes a village. I've been fooled by a really excited person that, you know, stepped up and wanted to do something, and then they moved away, and then the program didn't go anywhere. So I do believe in lots and lots of support behind whatever you're trying to do. And then learn from your mistakes. They're gonna happen. It doesn't have to be the end all be all, but learn from it and share that knowledge with somebody else. Ask those questions. Make sure that, you know, if you do want to start a zero waste program, whatever that looks like, talk to lots of people that have done it before, because they'll tell you what worked and what didn't, and your program might be that much more successful as a result.
And Gena, how about you?
Yeah, well, I think good number of successes, also a good number of failures. I would say for success, I think something we talked about earlier, the rebates and incentives, I think those have been really successful in eliminating some of the hiccups, maybe not all, and implementing new programs and policies. One that I haven't talked about is a home composting rebate, which has been around for about a decade now, but prior to the city providing curbside composting service, we still wanted to get our community used to diverting organic material. And so we offered free education for our community. There are classes, we have them online, we have them at community centers, farmers markets, libraries, all over the place, and different times of day and days of week. And those have been super successful. They are still today. We have still around 80 people coming to a class, and it's over 10 years now that we've been conducting this. We've seen the rebates die down now that we have implemented curbside composting, but people still want that education, which I think is great. But I think it also helped our community better understand how to use the service when we actually rolled out a curbside service that was part of their utility bill and part of their service, also helps build in that support for a slight rate increase to roll out that program to the community. So I think that rebates and incentives are really successful. We have one for our business community as well, which is a zero waste business rebate. And I didn't say the composting one is $75 per household for a home composting system of their choosing. The zero waste business rebate is up to $1,800 for a zero waste business practice that goes above and beyond the existing requirements from the ordinances like the universal recycling ordinance. And that again creates champions in our community who have a little bit of investment, $1,800 from the city, to make a change in their business operations. And then they can serve as case studies. So this is something you can do, and this is the impact that it had on us. So those are some of the successes. In terms of failures or places to learn, I'd say in our stakeholder conversations as we develop policy, when we were working with adding organics diversion to the universal recycling ordinance, we really were having a hard time getting input from the mobile food community. And in Austin, that's, could be 2,000 different mobile food trucks across the community. So it represents a large amount of the food distribution in our community. And we just couldn't get people to the meeting. So we started, okay, what can we do? We started going truck to truck. I just send staff out, go get some lunch, and then talk to them and figure out how do we get somebody to come to the meetings. There were language barriers. So I think we have improved our language access planning so that any of our services, we are prepared for providing the input opportunities in different languages. So we've really enhanced that. There's at least 8 different languages that are kind of core, relatively frequently spoken languages in our community. And so that was something we learned we have to do better there and make it accessible, make the conversations accessible. And then in some of the policy decisions that we made, we've discovered, okay, that didn't really work. Like our construction and demolition recycling ordinance, we're actually currently in the process of relooking at that because we're not seeing a great amount of compliance. And the enforcement is really minimal, and it's become a cost of doing business. So that it's a good framework, but we're not done. So we realize it's not perfect, and we didn't expect that we would get it right out of the gate, but we're not afraid to admit that this needs some tweaking, and we're going to open up the conversation again and start talking about it and make it better so that we kind of all win as a community in terms of its effectiveness. So just a couple of examples.
Those are good ones, Gena. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I'll go to you last but certainly not least. I mean, because I think everybody loves to win. It feels good, right? But there's so many valuable lessons when you don't succeed and you have some of those failures. So Danielle.
I wouldn't say we've had failures. I'll say learnings. And in that it's around engaging our employees more and talking more publicly, internally and externally about what we've done and our accomplishments. So we've definitely gotten much better at that over the last couple of years. Previously it was just in our annual report, which, not many people just read that. Then we broke out sustainability and community, which is great because people can just pick up the sustainability and community report and get that one piece out of it, which I think was really brilliant. And then just really supporting, like I said, the employee programs, and now marrying what the employees are passionate about into some of the other partnerships that we have. So our recent announcement of partnering and making donations to 25 historically Black colleges and universities, and building that partnership, we learned that there are 3 or 4 of those locations that sit on or reside near a Martin Luther King Boulevard. So we'll now be joining that together in this coming year partnership with Keep America Beautiful to make sure that we target those particular campuses. And in that, they get to build relationships with the local Keep America affiliate, as well as churches and other community organizations that want to do cleanups. So, we can be the impetus and the connector with some of our other community partners and some of our environmental sustainability partners as well. So it's just really being mindful of where those things can align up for, a win-win for everyone.
Thank you. And I love that partnership with HBCUs. As a HBCU grad, Clark Atlanta University, okay. I love to hear the story. So thank you for sharing. Thank you all so much for being amazing panelists. I'm going to bring Jacqueline in now. I think we have some, possibly have some other questions.
We do. We have a lot of questions. The tricky part is picking just a couple to go with. We'll address a few of them here, and then the rest we'll leave and do our best to address offline. So please, if you asked a question, don't feel as though it was wasted. Let's see. Here's one. Have any of you tried to encourage restaurants in your cities to switch from styrofoam takeout containers to more sustainable containers? And if so, how did you go about doing that? So, Gena, I see you shaking your head. You want to jump in and lead?
Yeah, I can. We have, and we had, you know, we had the bag ordinance, which some folks refer to as a bag ban. There were portions of our community that were like, do ban styrofoam. But realistically, given that our ordinance for single-use bags was overturned, we didn't see a lot of practicality of going that route. And so instead, we tried to encourage businesses to make good decisions. One of the things I just talked about, the zero waste business rebate, that $1,800 rebate for businesses going above and beyond. Moving away from styrofoam is not required by ordinance in the city of Austin. So that would be going above and beyond. So that rebate, some businesses have chosen to take advantage of that to switch over styrofoam takeout containers to compostable containers. And we're actually developing some case studies, so you can read, they'll be up on our website, and you can read about that business's experience and exactly what they did with that funding. But that is one way that we're trying to assist businesses in making sustainable improvements.
In Atlanta, we took a bit of a different approach, and we started with our city facilities first. And our largest city facility is Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, the world's busiest airport. So working with our vendors there to get rid of styrofoam packaging and go to compostable packaging. So we're just getting that off the ground now. I think we are learning some great things from them. And then as we do that, we like to move it into the larger Atlanta community.
Thank you. Any other comments? Great. Danielle and Gena, you both touched on this topic of producer responsibility. And Danielle, you spoke about the partnership between Diageo and Keep America Beautiful. Someone is asking a question, really for all of you, how might zero waste initiatives incentivize corporations to re-engineer their products, their processes, to really shift more of the responsibilities from citizens to companies, or at least to create more of a shared responsibility? So I'll start with you, Danielle.
I think that's already happening. You know, if you don't feel like it's happening with a particular organization or, you know, within your community, but most companies now I think Gena said it earlier, it's now a business imperative. You know, stockholders and shareholders are now asking about, you know, what we're doing around sustainability. So they want to know who they're investing in. You know, other people who partner with us want to know what we're doing around that. So corporations really don't have the luxury anymore of not doing something in the communities where they sell, live, and work. So, you know, I would encourage you to, you know, challenge those companies where you don't see it happening, or help assist them in how they can do it, if you're aware of anything particular. But I don't really see that, at least with the companies in my network and area of work. I don't see that at all.
Thank you. Other comments?
I was just going to say, related to that, I think consumer education, so making sure the community is educated and asking and demanding for these kinds of practices. In the city of Austin, we have a circular economy program that's within my division, and so we're really focused on eliminating waste from our local economy, looking at the supply chain, trying to identify using economic incentives of what gaps do we have in the supply chain and in the market, and how can we attract businesses and retain businesses to make sure that we're keeping all of that local and keeping the embodied energy of products circulating throughout our community so that we're not reliant upon new things. In terms of product stewardship and EPR, it's definitely something we keep tabs on as a city and encourage when we have a legislative cycle, definitely making sure that we are, where we can, advancing any potential legislation that comes up that would help move us in that direction. We also are an active participant in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's New Plastics, New Global Plastics Economy, which has kind of everybody from local government and everywhere else, the whole supply chain basically involved, and it's focused specifically on plastic, but I think that's really trying to push the needle to eliminate any unnecessary plastic and make sure that we are being mindful of the plastic that we do use. And there's another organization that's just focused on the US called the US Plastic Pact, which we're also actively involved in. So there's a lot happening with plastic, particularly right now, that Austin is tapped into.
Thank you, Gena. Rachel, Kanika, any additions? Okay, great. This one actually is for you, Gena. Based upon what you were discussing with composting, and Danielle, now considering all of the all of your hands-on experience, you might want to chime in too. Someone is asking, was your team successful in composting meat products, or did you only collect specific scraps?
So there's different ways that we compost in the city of Austin. I represent the solid waste utility, so our direct customers and our curbside composting service. It's a cart-based service, and the city collects and hauls that material, city employees, to a commercial processing facility that we have a contract with. So that's how it works in the city of Austin. Because it is going to a commercial composting facility, we do collect meat and bones in our curbside program. And then any of the other businesses, multifamily, anybody else in the community, it's done by private contract. So that would be a negotiation that they would make directly with their provider. And then I think that would be it. Oh, and the backyard composting program that we talked about, that was backyard composting. So of course we encourage people to eliminate meat and bones from that backyard composting, just because the heat, it would not get hot enough to break it down and kill the pathogens.
No, I don't have anything to add. She clearly knows more about composting than I do. But I did not put meat and bones. It was just backyard, as you call it, composting.
That is great. Thank you. Someone is asking, what can be done to make zero waste an economic advantage for our impoverished communities, which often lack the upfront investment to start or sustain projects, but live in the most environmentally degraded places? And Rachel, maybe we'll start with you if you have some thoughts there.
I was going to say, call Rachel.
Well, the drop-off programs that we design, we are looking to accept commodities that typically can generate revenue, so we can offset the cost of that program in the long term. You know, it's not something that's making a lot of money, but we definitely want it to, you know, pay for the staff person or whatever it is that, you know, helps make that program work. We actually market the materials for these communities. We are a true cooperative in that way, that when we go out for bid for services, we're bringing all of these communities to the table versus on their own. So we already know that we're getting great pricing for the material. We're watching the markets, making sure that what we're doing really can have that benefit. And we really explain that to them, you know, so they know that they're picking the commodities that are going to generate that revenue to help offset the cost of their program. We also do consider the diversion rate as well. That's a big thing that sometimes people don't always think about when they think about these programs. You know, we unfortunately have a very low tipping fee in Texas. And so those rates aren't as great as they might be in some West Coast states and East Coast states. We got a lot of landfills, we got a lot of space in Texas, and so those rates are generally low, but it's still a cost that they're saving in some way, shape, or form, in addition to any revenue that we can make on their cardboard or whatever else they're accepting. So we do really, really stress that as part of the program sustainability.
No, I feel you. The same thing here in Georgia. We have extremely low landfill tipping fees, so it definitely is a lot easier, especially in terms of economics, to landfill items than it is to compost or recycle them. We don't have a large range of commercial composting programs here in the state. We do have some, but here in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta in particular, they're lacking. So, you know, one of the things that our mayor is wanting to do is make sure that people have access to fresh and healthy foods, and that's, you know, one of our sustainable initiatives. So, you know, we're doing a lot of community and urban farmings, and we have one of the largest food forests in the city. You've heard of a food desert where there's a lack of fresh and healthy food. So we have a 7.1 acre food forest where there's fresh fruits, vegetables, herbs, and everything that you can get, and it's open to anyone. We just ask that you take what you need. So we do a lot of work with that food forest.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic. Any other comments?
I was just going to add, looking at the land development too in your community, that those conversations are really important, and often waste management is not something that is initially thought about, but access to facilities, even if it's a small community that doesn't necessarily want a landfill next door or what have you, thinking about a larger region and need access to rail or industrial, land that's zoned to industrial, but it really looking at kind of from a planning perspective, the way communities were laid out or your state, those things are important. So that was just a thought to stay tuned into that.
Thank you. I think we have 1 minute for one more question. I'm going to squeeze it in. Can you talk about what has worked and what hasn't worked in terms of educating the public about your programs? And I think if each of you can just share your perspective on that real quick, that would be terrific. Why don't we start with you, Rachel?
I just was on a webinar earlier today talking about education and looking at alternatives. I'm not on Facebook. If you put something on Facebook, I'm not going to see it. So social media isn't always the best option, even though it's a free option and it's really great. We do look at how to get into the newspapers, how we can do a story about it to educate the public. We look at websites. I'm constantly looking at their website to make sure that it makes sense to someone who doesn't do recycling or doesn't do zero waste as a job, that it makes sense to what we're doing. I think also I am a big believer in educating the leaders. I go to Lions Club's meetings and Keep Texas Beautiful affiliate meetings and try and get the leaders in the community educated about what's going on when it comes to waste management and recycling in their community, because I think then they help me get that information out there. Because these are primarily drop-off programs that we're working with, the kids aren't always with the parents to take them and show them what is and isn't recyclable. So we do have to think about how to educate adults that might not have that in their household. So we're always looking at, fun little ways to kind of reach those people that might not get that information otherwise. So that's really, I think, my biggest takeaway.
Thank you. Kanika?
I think I agree with Rachel that social media isn't always the best. Sometimes you got to hit them with a direct mail piece or some sort of something in their hands that can go at home, especially when it comes to recycling and waste, because they're looking for that information. So, and if they Google it, they may or may not have the right information for their community or where they live. We did a recycling audit program called Feet on the Streets to reduce our recycling contamination. And we gave curbside feedback. So you got an oops tag on your cart with our top 6 contaminants. And we didn't empty the contents of your recycling cart until you fixed it. And so it was that real behavior change piece. So even if you didn't do it, if your 14-year-old son did it, mom's going to know about it now because she has the oops tag on her cart, and whoever has to go, getting that out of the recycling cart, it's a lesson learned for everyone. So it's a real teachable moment.
And real quick, Danielle, your programs, your partnership, anything you want to add?
I would just say visuals work, as Kanika said. So doing neckers on some of our bottles in retail about, what the sustainability achievements have been for that particular brand have been very effective, as well as paid social media. So maybe not the free, but targeted social media with people who may be interested in those types of factoids. And as I said, creating a sustainability and community report specifically so that people can get that information very quickly in hand to understand what our goals are.
Right. Gena, real quick, 10 seconds.
Okay, real fast. I'd say find your gatekeepers who can make your message credible and make sure you're talking to them frequently. And then also frequently scan and see who are you not hearing from and why. So those are I'll just leave with those two things.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. As we close today, I would like to thank all of you on the call for joining this portion of our webinar series, particularly those who have joined the full Zero Waste series. Thank you for participating. We hope that you've been able to gain some valuable insights and actionable items that you can implement within your own communities. I would also like to extend a special thanks to our hosts and to our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to lead this vital discussion. We know it's not easy. Achieving zero waste and creating a circular economy, a more sustainable future, can be advanced when we all take action in our various roles as individuals and join our neighbors to deliver change. Keep America Beautiful at its core is about helping people find common purpose and inspiring them to take action to clean, green, and beautify their communities. As part of our work, Keep America Beautiful has just published the 2020 Keep America Beautiful National Litter Study. It is the most comprehensive study of litter in America. And we look forward to sharing more with you regarding that. We're proud to provide the details in that study regarding the quantity, composition, and resources of litter across the United States. The findings within the study continue to advance the mission of Keep America Beautiful and enable us to activate programs that really work to eliminate litter in America. In September, we'll be launching our annual Trash Dash event. It's a plugging event that will take nationwide through our local affiliates. Please visit our website, keepamerica.org, to learn more. There, you'll also find many opportunities to take action in your community, and our volunteer portal there can help connect you with your local Keep America a Beautiful affiliate. Please take a moment now to explore our website, and we hope that you'll see that it's fun and easy to participate in creating change. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.